Hey, what's up guys, Alex here. Thank you for checking this video and welcome to the lesson number 13 of the series of tutorial on how to build a premium theme for WordPress. Welcome again. In this tutorial we're going to take a look on how to create finally the last section of our administration panel before switching to building the front end. And the last section is something I created at the beginning. I just created the name, the menu item in my custom admin menu bar, and it's the Custom CSS section. So pretty much every theme has a Custom CSS section. Also, by default, WordPress in the appearance menu, in the submenu editor, has a custom CSS section. My goal is to create a custom CSS area with a nice text area that simulates a standard IDE that could be like Sublime Text or Brackets or Coda, the same IDE that I'm using, and giving the users the ability to input safely some custom CSS and edit, style a little bit their own sunset theme, or at least changing a little bit some aspect of the sunset theme. That could be like background colors or link colors or something else more complicated if the user is savvy enough with CSS. So let's get started with this new amazing tutorial. Let's switch to our text editor. As usual, I'm using Coda by Panic. Let's access our usual function-admin.php file where we have all the administration page settings that we coded in the past lesson to create our custom section. If we scroll all the way down to the bottom, let me add some white space so it's going to be at the center of your screen. We already have the function that generates the content of the settings page that I called settings page, and we have just the sunset custom CSS, an H1 echo that I'm echoing inside this page, as you can see here. What I want to do, I want to exactly do what I did for the last few pages, just simply requiring a custom template, a custom PHP file with all the settings that I want. So I can simply copy this code, remove all the space that I don't need, paste it here, indent the brackets, and change the name of this file. So sunset, I'm gonna use custom-css. Save it. Let's go back in our file view and let's grab, for example, the sunset contact form and let's duplicate this file. Let's rename this file with sunset custom-css. Access the file, change the title, sunset custom CSS, all uppercase. Here we can leave everything. We have to change a little bit these two parts, but before changing, we have to create the specific settings fields and the specific setting action, so we will know which ID and unique name we have to call in this section. So let's go back to the function-admin.php. Let's scroll back up to the section, to the function called sunset custom settings, and in here we have all the separated, nicely separated with our comments for the sidebar option, the theme support options, and the contact form options. What I want to do, I want to recreate the basically exact same thing for that I did for the contact form option, so I can register a new settings. Before, let's put comment custom CSS options. Let's register underscore setting, and the setting I want the option group to be sunset custom CSS options. The option name is sunset underscore CSS. I don't need any callback function here. Let's add a settings section, and the string ID is the unique ID that I have to create. So sunset dash custom dash CSS, CSS dash section. The title has to be pretty much identical to whatever we want, but in our case we are manually writing the title of the page, so we can use the same title or just something that it's useful for us to remind us what are we doing in this section. The callback function, we have to create a callback function, and I'm gonna call it sunset custom CSS section underscore callback. And as usual, with single quote, because it has to be a string, and the page that I want to print this new section has to be the same page that I'm writing this code, so the sunset custom CSS page. So I actually don't remember the ID of the page is this one. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna search for this function, sunset theme settings page, and I'm gonna check where I'm calling this function. So this function is generated here inside the Alicat sunset CSS page. So I can copy this ID, that is the ID of the submenu page, scroll back down to my new settings section and input here the string page. So sometimes it's normal to get lost in your own code, especially if you're creating a lot of different functions, a lot of different settings. This is confusing. This is really confusing. So always try to name your functions with a logic. So if a function is a callback, just call callback. If you're registering an option settings, just put options at the end of the unique ID. So it will be kind of easier to read it even after a couple of weeks or a month, or maybe next year you decide to update this whole theme. At least it's a better understandable even for yourself. So here, just to check, let's check the ID of the previous page. Yes, it's this one, so we're good to go. And as last option, we have to create a settings field that I have to use to save and register my custom field that is going to be the custom text data where a user is going to write his own CSS. So here as an ID, as usual, custom dash CSS, the title, insert your custom CSS callback sunset underscore custom underscore CSS underscore callback, and the page as usual is the same page here. The section is the section that I just generated, so it's the unique ID that I created here. And I don't need to pass any arguments of array, so boom, semicolon at the end. And we created also the settings field with SASS custom CSS callback. Now I have to create these two callback functions. So let's check this callback function here. And we can copy this, and we can copy also these other one, because are the two that I'm really interested in too. So let's copy this. Let's go down here. Maybe no, let's maintain all together. So this is the contact form. Let's scroll back up here. Let's paste it here. Let's rename this section. Boom. Custom CSS callback. Boom. Paste it here. Let's change the echo, whatever information we want to give to the user. If we want to write a title or not, if we want to leave this section completely empty, we can just leave it empty, or just write a return. But if we want to use this space, we can give more information, like customize your theme with your own CSS, or maybe customize sunset theme with your own CSS. That's pretty cool, right? You read something like that and say, yeah, let's customize it. Anyway, the other function that I want to change is the sunset custom CSS callback. That is the callback function of the settings field. So I have to retrieve whatever register settings, whatever unique setting I created, and I have to print it back inside my label, text data, whatever I want. So first, let's retrieve, let's change the variable to CSS, and let's remove the check because I don't need to check if the options is 1, is checked, whatever, is not a label. So the option that I have to retrieve, of course, is the register setting that I created before, and the unique ID that I assigned to these settings is sunset_CSS. So get option. And here I can change, for now, it's not gonna be definitive, but for now I wanna just show you what it's gonna be. I wanna just change this into a simple text area. So let's text area, CSS, and then let's close the text area. Let's write a placeholder, sunset custom CSS, and a CSS here. So I want to do a check. If empty $CSS. So if this variable is completely empty, I want to change the content of this variable with something else. So also in this case, I can use the contracted version of PHP if, instead of writing the complete full if, I can just write the variable CSS, then it's going to be if CSS is empty, so there's nothing inside, my content is gonna be different than this other one. If it's not empty, so the second one, I can leave this CSS is equal to itself, so I don't have to change the content. But if this variable is empty, I'm gonna write something like this: sunset theme custom CSS. And these two symbols are the / and asterisk are the symbols to create a comment in a CSS file. So automatically this section is going to be pre-populated with a fake CSS comment. Let's save it. Let's go back in our administration panel. Let's refresh and see if I broke something. No, I didn't break anything, but this contact form is calling a different function. So it's not calling the activate contact form, it's actually calling the contact form function. So sunset custom CSS callback, sunset custom callback. And here, what am I doing? Oh, sorry, I forgot to, okay. I forgot to change these values because my custom, my template, the sunset custom css.php, is still calling the settings field of the contact form and the settings action of the contact form. So I have to change now the settings field with the last two settings sections. So the sunset custom CSS section and the custom CSS option. So instead of sunset custom options, I have to call my new register settings. So the sunset custom CSS options. I'm missing just the sunset custom CSS options and the do settings. Instead, the alecad sunset theme support, that is this one for the contact form option, I have to call the alecad sunset CSS because this one is the page that I'm calling alecad sunset CSS. Save it. Let's go back in our administration panel. Let's refresh it. And now we have the whatever option we specified here. So we have our insert your custom CSS, the custom area, because the CSS variable is empty, it's printing this fake CSS code, and we have our standard text area. Then we can resize it, of course, if we want, but it's kind of ugly and it's not really a CSS area, it's just a really simple text area. So I can write everything. It's not recognized if I open like test, and if I open the brackets and I hit enter, and I cannot use tabs to create spaces. I have to use the space bar, and it's kind of annoying because it doesn't have line numbers or whatever. So let's style a little bit better this text area by using an open source code to convert a text area or a div or whatever into a proper IDE online, like a web IDE. What I'm gonna use today is Ace. This page, you can find it to ace.c9.io, is this high performance code editor for web. This code editor is on GitHub. It's open source. You can use it for your web project, and it's gonna convert whatever area into a custom web IDE. I personally already downloaded Ace and put everything, all its source code, the minified version, because it's lighter of course, inside a folder called Haze, inside my JavaScript folder, inside my JS folder. So I'm pretty ready to go, I'm pretty set to go. I just need to use the code specified inside the guide and embed the ace.js file whenever I'm using my custom CSS section. To do that, we have to access the enqueue file that I created before, and we have to change it a little bit. So right now the sunset load admin script is loading inside our administration panel. These scripts, these unique scripts, only if the top level page is equal to alec at sunset. So our hook is equal to top level page alec at sunset. Otherwise it's not gonna enqueue anything else. What I have to do, I have to change this code to include this section, this style and script and the WP enqueue media function only if this page is the page that I'm interested into. Otherwise, if I'm in the custom CSS page, I have to include something else. So let's change a little bit the code, and let's change it in equal. Open it. Let's paste it here. Let's close the brackets. Else I'm gonna return this, and let me indent this section. So now I have the option to create another else if and include other completely different scripts for my specific CSS section. So I can use else before, let's close the bracket, the curly brackets. Otherwise, let's write else if. Before writing this though, I have to print the hook and check what's the name of the hook when I'm accessing my custom CSS page. So let's write hook, echo hook. Let's go back in our administration panel. Let's refresh it. Let's copy this section, even if I'm not seeing it because it's underneath the sidebar. I can just copy it and paste it here. So let's comment the echo and leave it there because I could use it, I could need it in the future. So let's not remove it. Let's paste here the sunset page alicat sunset CSS without the space is equal to hook. Here I can open again the curly brackets and I can write whatever enqueue I want. So let's save it. Let's check if something went wrong. So if I go in my sidebar theme, I have the custom CSS here. I recognize that something is customized, like it's including my CSS because this area is customized with a style that is not native of WordPress. So I recognize that something's going on here. The other pages, they don't inherit that specific section, that specific CSS as JavaScript because they don't have the same hook. And in the custom CSS here, I can specify another type of CSS, another type of source code. So in my case, I wanna register the script of Ace. So let's go WP underscore register underscore script. And as a small trick, if you want, you can also use directly the enqueue script to print directly all the information without writing register and then enqueue. You could use the register to register some specific script and then enqueue that script in multiple different sections without specifying, again, rewriting all the options. But in my case, because I wanna, I'm pretty sure, I'm really sure that I'm gonna enqueue the Haze script only in this page, I can use directly the WP enqueue script and write everything inside this function. Enqueue underscore, oops, underscore, not plus, script. What's happening? Enqueue script. The handle has to be a unique handle that is sunset underscore, oh, just write Haze because it's unique and pretty much I'm not gonna have any issue. Let's write get template directory URI dot to connect the string dash dash single quote /js/haze/ace.js. That is the file that I need. Array has to be dependent to jQuery, that it's by default included inside the administration panel. The version of Ace, in my case, I downloaded the version 1.2.1, so I'm gonna write 1.2.1, and here I want to specify true because I want this JavaScript code to be in the footer. So I don't need to enqueue the script again because I wrote basically all the information that I usually write inside the register script to just register in a script directly inside the enqueue script function. So this function is going to enqueue directly whatever information I wrote here without passing through a register script and grabbing the same handler name. After this, I wanna enqueue another script that is gonna be my custom script, enqueue script, and in my case, I wanna write sunset custom CSS script. The search is gonna get pretty much the same, but let me copy all these options here because I wanna write pretty much the same thing and just change the file name, sunset custom CSS.js. Let me use the underscore, custom underscore CSS.js. Array, version 1, true in the footer. And pretty much that's it. So now what I have to do, I have to create this file, the sunset custom CSS.js. Otherwise, the system is going to trigger an error. So let's duplicate this section and this file. Let's change it to custom underscore CSS. Let's open it here. And the good thing about Ace is built on vanilla JavaScript, so it doesn't need actually jQuery to function. I can delete all this custom script and just write a variable called editor that is going to be equal to ace.edit. And here I have to specify the unique ID of my editor that is going to be custom CSS. And semicolon at the end to conclude. If we access the embedding guide of the Ace editing settings, we can see here we have other option to set the theme or to set the mode to JavaScript, CSS, or whatever we want. But we're gonna see it later to see how the theme completely changes. For now, we're gonna leave it really simple. So let's not worry about that. The other thing that I want to do, let's reaccess back to our editor. In my function-admin.css, function-admin.php, instead of printing a text area, I want to print actually the div. So instead of printing text area with a placeholder, I'm going to print div with the ID has to be the same ID that I specified in the custom JS, in the custom CSS.js to call the Ace edit function. So custom CSS is my unique ID that I decided to specify for this section. Let's close the div, not div. Let's save it. Let's access back our administration panel, and if we refresh it, everything disappeared. If we access the source code and we try to find whatever happened to our div editor, you will notice that here in the web inspector of your browser, there's actually something inside, but nothing is showing up because Ace needs by default some CSS to style the size of this section. So what I have to do, I have to enqueue another file, in this case, CSS file, to customize this specific custom text area, custom div area. And also in this case, I can use directly the enqueue style to call all the functions in line without registering the style before. So in this case, I want to use ace again. So I know that I'm styling the ace section, and the mixer search is going to be pretty much identical to this one. So let's copy all this section and paste it here. And instead of here, let's write sunset.ace.css, and let's leave everything else like this. Okay, save it. Let's go back in our file 3, open the CSS section. Let's duplicate this file, and instead of admin copy, let's name it ace.css. Here we can completely delete whatever we wrote here, and let's use the same ID that we used before. So number sign or hashtag, hash, whatever, and custom CSS. And here I want to put a position relative and width of 500 pixel and height of other 400 pixel. Save it. Let's go back in our administration panel, refresh it, and we have finally our custom CSS section. So if you notice here, even if it's super ugly, something really sweet happened. So every time we insert a row, we have the number of the row. We can click on the row to select the entire row, and the syntax gets recognized. So text, if I put something here and I open the brackets, I can use the tab to create a proper spacing. If I highlight a bracket, you will notice here the closing or the opening bracket gets highlighted. So it's really helpful. And here we have text, font, oops, sorry. I can write like font size. I forgot how to write CSS font size 13 pixels. Oh my God, pixels, okay. Cancel pixel. Okay. Something that I can style also, I can style a little bit the whatever source code this text area have to handle. So by default is nothing. It's just a simple IDE, but we can specify with some pre-built code from Haze what kind of text area we want to have. So let's go back in our JS file, the Sunset Custom CSS JS file, and here now we can use the variable editor that we created here to call the ace edit in our custom div, and use a pre-built API function of ace to set theme. And I want to set a theme that I really like, that is the Monokai theme, that it's something dark, it's really clean and easy to read. So let's re-access ace, is the URL, is the folder where all my script is, theme dash Monokai. Save it. Let's go back in our administration panel, refresh it, and now we have the Monokai theme that it's pretty sweet. Look at that, look at that. It's dark and white text, but also here, if we write again some custom code, some custom CSS code, like for example, these should be styled in some way, or maybe not, like this should be styled in some way with font size should be recognized, but it's not recognized because these text area, this IDE is not set to recognize a specific code, a specific language. What we can do, we can use another API of Ace to edit this behavior and reuse the same variable editor dot get session, open and close the bracket, and set the mode of this current session to CSS. So let's open the double quote, ace to access the same folder, mode to specify the mode, and I want the mode to be CSS. Save it. Let's go back here, refresh, and now we know that worked because the comment in CSS is darker gray instead of white. And if I write dot test, you see it's highlighted. And also, because it's empty, I have suggestion. The rule is empty, or if I don't specify the brackets, the expected brackets, expected curly brackets, line 3 colon 70 is amazing. It's like super easy, super simple. And now Did you see what happened? I hit enter, I hit hard return, and I have already the indentation that I need, and I can use font size 13 pixel, and I have everything nicely styled with a nice color coding, and this is super easy to edit, so your users will love this section because it's easy to understand. It totally looks like this. It totally looks like a legit IDE. See, it's pretty much identical, and everything is beautiful. Now we have another small issue because by default we created in our function addme a div to contain the custom CSS, to contain our options. We don't have a proper text area, we don't have an input with an ID to send those information and save it automatically to our WordPress. So what we can do, we can create another text area after this section and put it text area as a hidden text area, and before saving the option, copy all the text, all the information that we have inside this custom CSS div and put it inside the text area, and then automatically WordPress will be able to save that option with whatever information we have. So let's do that. Let's create a text area with ID equal of the same option name, the same register setting that I have here, and same name here, Sunset CSS, and by default we have to put a style, an inline style of display none, and just to be sure we can put like visible hidden, so it's not going to be visible, it's going to be displayed, and if you don't access the source code you don't even know that the text area is here. Let's close the text area, and inside the text area we can print by default this CSS option, because if the user doesn't update anything, we still gonna have this option already inside our text area. But anyway, every time we save it, before save it, we're gonna stop with JavaScript. We wanna manually stop sending information of the form, and we're gonna dynamically copy whatever custom code the user wrote inside our IDE, and we're gonna put it inside our custom text area with the proper ID, so WordPress can handle all this stuff for us. Before going any further though, we have to extend a little bit more our register settings by calling a sanitization callback function, because we're giving the user the ability to write custom code inside our admin theme, and this custom code is going to be saved, it's going to be stored inside our MySQL database. This can be really dangerous because a user can write malevolent code like malicious code, can inject some SQL, can inject some weird JavaScript stuff, so we have to extra sanitize this text area because we are telling them, okay, you can write stuff in here, you can write actual code, so we don't want encounter any issues, any problem. What we can use, of course, there exists a pre-built function of WordPress to sanitize a text area to encode a specific HTML entities inside our administration panel. What we have to do, we have to extend the register settings option where we are creating the sunset_CSS option, and let's create the sanitize callback. So let's use sunset_sanitize_custom CSS, and let's copy these. I'm already used a sanitization option here, so sanitize settings. Let's duplicate this. Let's copy the sanitize function that I decided to name it. Let's rename here. Input the output, instead of using sanitize text field, I don't even have to replace the @ of the Twitter handle. Instead of using sanitize text field, I can use escape text area to sanitize the input, that is my actual area, and this function is gonna encode all the text for use inside of a text area element. So I'm gonna be pretty safe, pretty sure that whatever the user is inputting in my text area is gonna be escaped properly before saving whatever information inside my database. So let's scroll back up and let's check if we did everything properly. The custom CSS, we have display visible, save it. Let's go back in our administration panel. Let's refresh it. Of course, no option saved, but if we access the source code in the inspector and we analyze our options here, we will notice that here we have a text area that is not visible because we have both display known and maybe instead of visible, we have to specify visibility. Yes, hidden. Sorry, the CSS value is not visible, but visibility hidden. Okay, we have this option. So here it's completely empty, but at least we have sunset theme.css. And if I write something inside here, for example, test, and I save the changes, I will have test written here because whatever I wrote inside the text area gets automatically saved, automatically sanitized by WordPress. So what I have to do now, I have to block this click before it triggers the form sending option, the form post option, and copy paste whatever thing I write inside this option here, inside this div element, and put it inside the text area. So what I have to do, I have to access my JavaScript code and open jQuery. In this case, I really need jQuery. Let's reuse the same function that I used before and let's paste it, jQuery document ready function, and attribute the $ option to jQuery. Let's close the curly brackets, let's close the regular brackets and semicolon at the end to close it. Update CSS, or you can call this variable whatever you want, and this variable is gonna contain a function to update our actual CSS area, our actual text area. So let's write function, regular brackets, curly brackets. Inside the curly brackets we can write our custom function. So let's open, call jQuery with a $sign. Inside here we have to call the ID of our text area that we can retrieve inside our function admin, and the ID is sunset underscore CSS, hash symbol sunset underscore CSS dot val is the jQuery function, function to access the information of the value of a specific HTML input, text area, checkbox, whatever. And inside here we have to use some pre-built API of our editor, so we can access the editor dot get session to retrieve the current section, and then dot get value, and open and close the bracket. So now this variable called update CSS has inside this function. So every time we call this function, that it's this variable, it's an actual function. So every time we call this function inside this unique variable that we can retrieve whatever we want, this thing is gonna happen. So our custom hidden text area is gonna get the value of whatever things is written inside the ID, whatever thing the user wrote inside the CSS haze area. Now what we have to do, we have to hook the submission of our form, this method post this option, the sunset general form, to this function here. So every time a user submit the form, this function has to get triggered in order to update the text area. To do that, we have to just specify a unique ID to our form. For example, save dash custom CSS form. This is our unique ID, and every time this form gets submitted, we have to call that function. To do that, we have to use, as usual, jQuery, that it's really powerful and gives us all the options to do this. So hashtag the ID of the form, dot submit is the function that gets called when a form gets submitted, and inside here, inside the brackets of this submit function, we have to just simply call the variable that we specify, the update CSS variable. So every time the form gets submitted, before submitting, this function will update the CSS in our text area, and then after this function gets exhausted, gets executed, the form will be automatically submitted without any issues. So we can put all this code together. We can put all in line to have just 2 lines, so it's more clean. Cool. Let's access our backend. Let's refresh it. And now here, if I click save change, of course, the page gets refreshed, setting saved, whatever. But if I write some custom CSS and I go into another line and I write font size column 13 pixel, and I click save changes, all my options are still here. All my custom text is still here. So if I refresh, change the page, and refresh the page, everything is still here and everything gets saved inside our database after the sanitization that we define in our function admin. So these sanitization here right at the bottom, we escape the text area with whatever input we want, and we can safely save all the custom CSS that the user wants to insert inside this custom area. And if we access the source code and we go take a look at our text area here, you will notice here we have actually the text area with the input, whatever input we have. So if I change this, if I remove the test and if I leave just an empty declaration, this is not updated. But if I click save, this gets updated, and also the text area, the actual value of the text area gets updated thanks to the JavaScript function that I wrote here with the submit of this form. So also for today's lesson is pretty much it. We finally completed, we finally finished the backend. We have all the options, all the sections that I wanted to create to show you how to create some custom options, some advanced contact form, some advanced custom fields, some advanced custom post type, and some nice stylish things for our user to customize the theme that we want to release. From the next lesson, we're gonna start building finally the front end with whatever information we have in the backend. So if we access, just an example, the front end, you will notice it's completely empty. We got nothing because we didn't even specify some header, some post, nothing. It's completely empty. So we're gonna start from scratch in building our beautiful sunset theme. Has the Photoshop file that you downloaded at the beginning of this session. So thank you again guys for checking this video. As usual, if you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up or subscribe to my channel. And if you really like my tutorial and you want to spend just a couple of minutes to check a really amazing page that I created, you can click on the link in the description or on this video, the support me page, where you can find all different ways to support me and my channel and help me to do more and better video for you. So thank you again for checking this video guys, and until next lesson, as usual, happy coding!